There are hundreds of chapters of Space Marines, drawn from all kinds of routes and spread wide across the galaxy. Some were founded as a means of replenishing numbers, whilst others had a specific duty in mind, and it seems that it is one of the latter group of chapters that we shall explore today. Believed to hail from a founding about which almost nothing is known, this chapter is one of the wardens of a galactic region far from the light of the Astronomicon. They are a rare chapter indeed, one that takes to the field without the leadership or guidance of its chapter master, as for them, that role is to invite a slow death performing a vital task. They are sons of Corvus Corax, first led by an individual known as Corsadus. Hailing from the world of Oculus on the fringes of the Ghoul Stars, they are the Death Spectres. This is Tactica Imperialis, and welcome to 40k Stories. Though records of the time are patchy, the chapter known as the Death Spectres is believed to have been founded during the 13th or Dark Founding, believed to have been during M35. We're unsure mainly because of the founding of the Exorcist at the same time, which shrouds everything, but we do know that the Death Spectres are descended from the line of Corvus Corax and the Raven Guard. This does come with a downside genetically that seems to happen a lot with some sons of Corax: albinism. This is due to the melanchromic organ being defective like many Raven Guard, causing the skin to become paler, and the mucranoid and Betcher's glands both don't work as well, meaning no heat-resistant sweat and no poisonous spit. I guess that's no sweat off their back though. Sorry, puns. There is another gene seed flaw within the Death Spectres, causing them to become bald as they transition from human to Astartes, but that's not really a big deal to my mind. The chapter itself was seemingly founded on Terra, with its first chapter master being an individual known as Corsadus. The reason we think they came from Terra is the same reason they came to inhabit their current homeworld of Oculus. When Corsadus was swearing his oaths of loyalty, it is believed it was at the foot of the Golden Throne itself, though this makes very little sense as only Custodians, Sisters of Silence, and some Mechanicus members and those the Captain General of the Custodes himself allows have access to the throne room as a rule of thumb. Wherever it did so happen to be, during this time of swearing oaths, the new chapter master was given a vision, supposedly by the Emperor, that would lead him and his chapter to the northeast of Ultima Segmentum in the Nostramo sector. There they found Oculus, a world established during the Great Scouring in the aftermath of the Horus Heresy to monitor the region of space known as the Ghoul Stars. Though it had originally been in the hands of Black Shields, formerly of the Death Guard, now the world was primed for the taking by the Death Spectres, but it was not the planet alone that had been of interest to Corsadus. Whilst Oculus was undoubtedly an asset, allowing the chapter to keep vigil over the notoriously dangerous yet mysterious inhabitants of the Ghoul Stars, beneath its surface lay a Xenos artefact of immense power. This was the Shariax, also known as the Throne of Glass, hidden within a secret chamber beneath Oculus and supposedly able to aid the watch over the Ghoul Stars. However, the Shariax's use comes with a price, as there must be an individual sat on the throne itself to power or guide the device's abilities. Rather than do something callous and sacrifice countless chapter serfs or Occludian natives just to keep the device running over the years, I suppose that Corsadus' vision dictated another path, sitting in the throne for himself. This action would pretty much be the last that the chapter master likely made, as to sit in the Shariax means a slow death as the device drains the interred of life to maintain itself, seemingly petrifying them in the process. However, by effectively sacrificing himself to the Shariax, the work of the Death Spectres guarding the Ghoul Stars could be undertaken with greater success, and well that it could, for the event known as the Pale Wasting a millennia or so prior after the Nova Terra Interregnum had devastated almost a dozen Astartes chapters when the star's inhabitants seemingly swept into the Imperium. Either inspired by or simply adopting the example of their founder, the chapter master of the Death Spectres, known as the First Spectre or as the Megia in Occludian Low Gothic, always takes the place of their predecessor when the Shariax finally finishes him off. How long this takes is unclear, and I suspect it's likely tied to age and a host of other factors, but it means that the Death Spectres never have a chapter master to lead them on the battlefield. In truth, the Megir becomes functionally useless after their internment on the Throne of Glass, only somewhat able to direct their chapter and certainly not up to day-to-day micromanagement. As such, the chapter has instituted a council known as the Menrahir that runs the Death Spectres rather than the First Spectre. That's not to say the chapter master isn't involved at all, but as only the first captain and chief librarian ever get an audience with the Megir, it is likely they who wield much of the authority. I'm also unsure as to the lines of succession when the Megir is finally claimed by the Shariaks. It may be a vote by the Menrahir, it could be dictated by rank, e.g. the first captain, but I can't say for sure. There are some who claim that the Mezazar, or chief librarian, is the one to sit upon the Shariaks and become the Megir, but that as well is not entirely clear. If it's true, it makes the Death Spectres technically one of only a handful of chapters who are officially led by a Psyker, as well as implying a potential operational method for the Throne of Glass. Being Xenos, having it being psychically powered using psychic energy, it would make sense to my mind. Whatever the exact truth of the matter, the Death Spectres have made the situation work for them throughout the past 6,000 years or so. Even not having a chapter master on the battlefield isn't much of an issue as far as we can tell, and though they haven't exactly cleansed the Ghoul Stars, not even High Master Herbert's Black Templar Crusade could do that, there hasn't been another event like the Pale Wasting since their vigil began. Despite their location, we have no records detailing wars between the Death Spectres and the inhabitants of the Ghoul Stars. I assume we just don't know about them due to their relative isolation, right on the edge of the Imperium, away from the Astronomicon, and it's a region where things get complicated anyway, so I sort of understand. However, we do know some battles that the Death Spectres have taken part in, either as the primary combatant or in support of a wider campaign. Sadly, the earliest of these that we have records of is actually in M40 rather than M35 or 6, which is annoying, but that's just Imperial record keeping for you. This was a battle in early M40 known as the Vern 4 Offensive, which pitted the Death Spectres against a Drukhari Cabal who ambushed the Astartes and did a fair bit of damage. Unfortunately, the outcome of this battle is unknown, especially with the presence of an Eldari Corsair warband further complicating matters, but somehow I doubt the Death Spectres came out looking good against foes like that. They then took part in the Macaron Crusade in early M41, joining the vast amounts of Astra Militarum and Adeptus Astartes expanding the western frontier of the Imperium. Must have been one long warp jump to get across the entire galaxy. I don't envy them for doing it. Frustratingly, their exact role in the Crusade is unknown, nor do we know exactly how much of their strength was committed by the Menrahir, but I doubt it was a huge amount, as the Astra Militarum are the renowned forces most parts in the Macarius army. We can be pretty sure though that they didn't stick around in the aftermath, as the Macarian heresy following the Lord Solar's assassination is not known at all to have included the Death Spectres. Moving forward in time, the next known appearance of the Death Spectres comes as part of the Oculus Crusade that began in 777 M41, though the location of the Crusade is actually better known than the Crusade itself. Said location is the Jericho Reach, out on the southeastern end of Ultima Segmentum and a hotbed of utter chaos, both with and without the capital C. The Death Spectres don't seem to have been a major force in this campaign either, instead forming part of a group known as a Crusader Company, along with other chapters such as the Disciples of Caliban. They did commit a couple of squads though, as they got caught up in an incident at the former Mechanicus research station of Zin Sin. I say former because it ran afoul of a certain extragalactic species, the Tyranids, specifically High Fleet Dagon that broke off from High Fleet Behemoth and found its way to the Jericho Reach in around 814 M41. When said High Fleet reached Zin Sin, the two Death Spectre squads we can account for arrived on the planet, evacuating the Mechanicus personnel stationed on the world and, time allowing at least, extracting what data they could take with them. It seems that the Spectres did not stay in the Jericho Reach permanently though, since that combat is still ongoing and it is known that the chapter committed its entire strength to dealing with another Tyranid threat. But before that, they and other chapters fell foul in 857 M41 of another Xenos enemy, one pretty much diametrically opposed to the Great Devourer depending on how you look at it, the Necrons. After visions of Orican the Diviner were somehow foiled by the intervention of the Silver Skulls, time travel chicanery saw things change in a punitive and preemptive strike. This had one issue though, as the Death Spectres and others launched a blockade on the Lazar system to punish the Necrons in turn. In fact, this was a success at first, as the primary tomb world was destroyed by the Astartes coalition, but when the remaining secondary tomb worlds began to activate, the Spectres and, well, everybody but the Silver Skulls withdrew. The Necrons hammered the Skulls, but the Spectres were long gone by then, on to face the second Hive Fleet we can account for them fighting, Jormungandr. One of the subtler Hive Fleets, the exact date of arrival in the galaxy for Jormungandr is unknown, nor can we be sure exactly when the Death Spectres arrived to engage the Tyranids. The Sons of Occludus were present though for the death of the Hive Fleet at large, at the Battle of the Black Nebula in 995 M41. A grand and mixed Imperial fleet was assembled to face the Tyranids in what we believe was Northern Ultima Segmentum, and after heavy fighting, the Hive Fleet was largely defeated despite massive losses on both sides. The Spectres were mostly used as boarders, as Space Marines are known to be good at that, either assaulting or teleporting aboard the largest of hive ships. This, I assume, was designed as Norn Queen assassination, trying to cripple synaptic links between the Tyranids before they could adapt and recover, but we don't have records of the attacks, I'm not completely sure. It was a piecemeal destruction as opposed to a single crushing blow, but the Spectres played their part and much of Jormungandr was destroyed in the Black Nebula, even if remnants lived on elsewhere, as I think I discussed when we talked about the Hive Fleet in more depth. Finally, and most recently, we can confirm the presence of 6 Death Spectre companies committed to stopping the 13th Black Crusade of Abaddon the Despoiler. Though keeping tabs of, well, almost anyone in that massive campaign is rather difficult, it seems as though the Death Spectres were involved in a battle called the Siege of Lelithar in the Cadian sector, but unfortunately details are rather lacking. We also don't have any post-Primaris information on the chapter to this point, but I suspect that they have been reinforced by the creations of Belisarius Core by now, despite their faraway homeworld. I mean, there's probably a squad knocking about that Gilliman ran across, so I guess that counts. I'd be interested to see how, when the time arrives, a Primaris Magia handles the Shariax relative to the regular predecessors. Will he last more or less time, unlock some new ability, be able to do more or less with it? Who knows? I guess we'll have to wait and see. Sadly, we know very little of the individuals within the Death Spectres, but there are a couple of people and things that I feel are worth discussion before we move on. The main thing, leading on to perhaps the best known of the chapter today, is the Librarius. We mentioned earlier that the Magia may well be a Psyker, as well as the higher prominence of the Mezazar in the chapter's rankings. However, there's more to the Librarius than just that. It seems as though the Librarians, as a rule of thumb, carry more influence and are also more numerous than those of other chapters. They are known as the Order, and their induction/initiation ritual, and actually the chapters as a whole, is perhaps a cause of or homage to the chapter's name. At the start of their transformation to full Astartes, and again upon full ascension, the initiates to the Death Spectres, well, die. Seemingly tested by the temptations of chaos, symbolized by a vision or dream of a place known to the Librarius as the Black River, the first death is the shorter, but seemingly the more dangerous in terms of aspirant death rate. It's unclear whether non-psychic Astartes see the river, as it's only really talked about for the Librarians who are killed a third time during their own initiations to become Codicias. And yes, by the way, they do actually recover from this death. It's not like they die and become sort of zombie Space Marines. As cool as that sounds on paper, it's not that, don't worry. Either way, death is no stranger to the aptly named Death Spectres. They revere it and their fallen far more than those who live. We know of those rituals mainly due to the tale of a potential future Mezazar. Leandro Karras. Currently, he is believed to be a codicier, but his whereabouts are a bit of an unknown as he was seconded to the Death Watch for the portion of his tale that we know. This secondment to the Death Watch came from the Mezazar Athio Caudatus, rather than being the choice of Karras himself, but the opportunity to gain reputation and honour the chapter are both appealing for a Space Marine when the Watch comes calling. That said, Karras made a good enough effort regardless, being assigned leadership of his own Death Watch kill team and becoming known as Talon Alpha. The kill team is Talon, he's the leader, therefore Alpha. His team didn't know him as such though, referring to him as Scholar as a sort of code or nickname. He's a librarian, I guess they like puns. The rest of the team consisted of an Ultramarine, an Exorcist, an Imperial Fist, a Raven Guard, and a Lamentor's Dreadnought, all working under an Inquisitor referred to solely as Sigma. Together they undertook a number of missions, fighting a multitude of Xenos foes with Karras at the forefront. The first was aboard an Orc ship, tasked with hunting down and assassinating its captain, Bloodwreck. Though the Dreadnought Chiron was unable to fight in this one due to sheer bulk, the mission was a great success, with Karras being the one to personally take the head of the Orc leader. This was no easy fight though, as the psychic potential and combat prowess put a real strain on Scholar, and almost caused him to lose control of his already potent psychic powers. Luckily, the presence of the Exorcist Darian Roth, or Watcher, was able to rein this near loss in, and, unknowingly, save Karras from execution by the Exorcist, who may or may not have had orders to put him down if things got out of hand. They then moved on to a research facility on the world Menatar, with a mission to extract but not kill a biohybrid that may or may not have been Tyranid related. This mission was failed due to the Lamentor, as the Dreadnought destroyed the hybrid despite Sigma's orders to spare it. In response, the Inquisition claimed total deniability for the op, and Kill Team Talon withdrew without anyone really knowing about it. Karras has led them for 6 years now, but we're unsure whether he'll stay beyond however long his scheduled secondment to the Watch is. If and when he does leave, I doubt he'll have any friends amongst the squad he led. Talon Alpha was distant from the others and was even jealous of the friendship between the Fist and the Raven Guard, but was rebuffed by the impassive Exorcist when he attempted to befriend him, though the whole "I'm going to shoot you if you do misbehave" thing probably didn't help. I suspect he will be back with the Death Spectres at some point, not least because his Full Sword Arcaman is their third holiest relic after the Throne of Glass and the bones and armour of the original Macaron Crusade. My best guess as to why he was sent? Mezazar Caudatus wanted to test and hone the skills of his gifted codicier in order to, for want of a better word, groom his successor. It would not surprise me in the slightest if, assuming the Death Watch don't keep him or kill him, Leandro Karras will become the de facto leader of the Death Spectres and then potentially take a seat upon the Shariax when the time comes, if things are as we think they are. One more thing on Karras. His inner eye. His consciousness at the cost of a wound on his head. This and his telepathic specialism is actually not the classic set of Death Spectre psychic powers as far as we know. Instead, those powers are often divinatory. Perhaps boosted by the power of the Shariax, the Mezazar and the Order can not only read the strands of fate, but manipulate them as well. Quite how far they can take this is unknown, since that trick is generally reserved for the Eldari or maybe Varro Tugurius, but anything that helps the Death Spectres in their vigil cannot be underestimated. At this point, just before we wrap up, I'd also very much like to talk about the various Begirs of the past, who they were, how they came to take their place in the Shariax, that sort of thing. Unfortunately, Crusaders aside, we know none of them, and what we know of Crusaders has already been discussed in this log earlier on. Obviously, this is very frustrating for me, as it prevents a good lot of the history of the Spectres from being looked at, as well as what they've been up to down the years. But it also prevents us from proving or disproving the whole theory on the psychic nature of the Throne of Glass, and thus whether the Mezazar becomes the Megir and all of that fun stuff. Hopefully more information will come to light one day, either of the past or of the present, because this is a fascinating chapter that I wish we knew more about. I mean, there hasn't been a lot to discuss in this log, but it's a lot of fun information there, and I really do hope we get some more. So end the tales of the Death Spectres. Despite their somewhat isolation on the eastern fringe, the inhabitants of Oculus are a vital barrier between the Ghoul Stars and the Imperium. Thanks to the sacrifice of their chapter master on the Shariax, they are a formidable foe to face tactically and on the battlefield, and whilst they have a few intriguing questions to answer, they have to be respected for their prowess. Now at this point, I'd love to go to Oculus and plunder it for information, but we must move on to the next of our champions of humanity. Since we've looked at a chapter seemingly led by a Psyker, I think it's only fair to look at a Psyker in our next entry for that mini-series. But which one? Well, the Death Spectres have fought Tyranids a lot, so yeah, let's look at someone who supposedly, if the rumours are to be believed, penetrated the hive mind itself, such as their psychic power. For now though, thank you for watching Tactica Imperialis, and I'll see you all again. Goodbye.